down. And then the code block is with these three diagrams. Come on in. And here's an example of what it looks like, which is convenient because I don't have to actually do it. So it does have syntax on it, which is definitely really cool. And if you ever wish to include code from another language in here, I think it actually uses the GitHub syntax. So you could do like 3 ticks and then the word Perl or JavaScript.
I do that in Discord all the time.
Right, and then you get the highlighting for the different language. I'm pretty sure it's how that works. So yes, so you're going to see here that this is for the crate, my crate. There's the crate name. It shows you the function name. It'll give you the opportunity to see things that are, I believe, private as well. It'll generate the documentation for that too. So that's always cool. Mechanics, errors, and safety. Now, one other thing too is that, okay, so the way that the private thing works, just as like a gotcha deal, in case anyone does decide to do it, if you have a whole module inside of your crate that is private, it does not generate the documentation, as far as I remember. You have to have it exported somewhere. And if the module has private functions in it, I think it shows. But by any means, it's a minute thing, and I guess really who cares if private or public documentation doesn't show. I think there may be an argument into Cargo doc to help that out. Yeah, document-private-items. There you go. So that is somewhat useful in the event that you're documenting stuff you don't want to send out to regular users or to clients. You're creating development documentation for other people to develop on the library. So think of it like this. You're developing a library. You do want to ship this library out to clients. You don't want them to use your private items. You're onboarding a new guy, Bob. Bob is an idiot. Bob's coming to the company, and he's not used to Rust code. You want Bob to be able to read your private internal documentation. You can generate a private copy with the document-private items argument, and then Bob gets all of the internal documentation you have for things that you don't publish to the client, or that you don't support with the client. I use that too. Mechanics, the scenarios in which the functions can be commonly used sections, mechanics, errors, and safety. They're not really commonly used. I know that they say they are, but there's really not much of a convention imposed by the Rust community on documentation. Really, Perl is actually far better at this. But where they have up here examples, right? And then you see this down here, examples. You can also have another section called mechanics, errors, and safety. And then you can discuss how you're handling mechanics, errors, and safety. Mechanics is almost nothing you're ever going to see because you don't tend to handle mechanics inside of the program, inside of Rust differently. What I mean by that is, generally speaking, when you're interacting with libraries, they don't panic. It's really bad Rust practice to panic. So you typically tend to see panics when you're working with C code, and it'll say something like, this is how the C code panics when it crosses that boundary. But like I said, these aren't common. Documentation comments as text. So here's something else that you have. I used to like this a lot more, and now I stopped using it entirely. And the main reason why I stopped using it is because I'm not really comfortable with the way documentation tests work with the rest of their tests. And how that works is the example code blocks in your documentation execute, right? So if you have assert tell you whether or not that documentation fails or passes. So when you see exert EQ inside of a code block in Rust in the document, then you can validate that that is actually correct because there's a mechanism in there that makes sure it's correct. This is really good for telling you that the documentation is up to date and that it runs. It's really bad for writing actual unit tests. So don't abuse them. Don't try to make all of your unit tests assert EQ. In my opinion, not good. Just try to make your documentation use assert EQ because this shows you very clearly what your end user is going to be getting when he uses the code you document. Get to him. Oh. Okay, so 2-minute recess. I'm gonna go open up the door. Be right back.
What I got.
Look at the head shifts out there. MacBook?
So honestly, I don't know much about MacBooks. My mom's friend got it for me. Apparently, he cleans out apartments. It's left in there, and I don't have a charger for it. So I thought I could ask if I could use yours.
Sure.
This looks similar, actually.
Yeah, you can use one. Eventually I'm gonna want it back, is that all right?
Oh no, I was gonna use it for
I guess
hours.
that's okay.
Oh yeah. I don't even know if this turns on.
All right.
This is pretty good. I liked it.
All right, go get me would you mind getting me a water?
Oh yeah, sure.
And then we'll be even.
I mean,
Do they have water bottles?
No, not a
I
water.
thought,
I can't.
fizzy
Can't.
water.
The bottle. Fizzy water.
Oh,
bottle.
They have cans of water?
Which he doesn't mind, whichever.
Whatever.
I ask him that question every time.
It's very important.
So you had to take the contents of a black cherry coat water.
Oh, cool. Hey, so I'm Robert. I'm Josh's dad. How you doing? Hi.
I've done it for so long, I'm like, I never introduced myself.
See, make sure that connects to yours. Because they don't all. They can be.
I
There can be
think
differences.
you just want to see if it turns on.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it looks like,
Oh,
is that
wow.
firewire on the side?
Yes, it is. That's the one thing I do know.
Do you have firewire?
What does that mean?
Firewire was the thing developed by.
That's my
Firewire
first-
800.
my
That's,
first-
that's the upgraded firewire.
Ooh, nice.
My first intro to audio engineering, I connected to an audio interface via FireWire.
There you go, 800 megabits.
The FireWire interfaces were no joke.
That was a real thing back then. See, that's exactly why they made that.
They brought it back too. The new M1s have the whatever max right.
I'm waiting for the M3,
Well, that's for the
then I'm gonna
core
upgrade
itself.
this 2012.
I like my Intel.
Now,
The cool thing I can say is I have the last Intel MacBook Pro that Apple's made.
But you probably, if you run it hard, you probably got some thermal throttling going on.
Yep.
Okay, so how do we do the test in there? I'm trying to figure out.
What does orange mean?
It's
Orange means it's charging.
okay. It's not
Green would be
green
fully
when it's
charged.
topped off.
Just wait for it to. I'll check it later. For the superstitious, good luck.
That charger might not charge it super fast, because it's a smaller, power supply.
Actually, it might fit, it might actually match that one better than this.
Yeah, we'll see.
You went to see.
Where do you get it from? That's the old house. Where
Yeah.
you get the charger? Did it come with your machine?
Yeah. Actually, it came with a different machine, because mine was broken, so that's the only one I have now, but it's not. It's really geared for a smaller MacBook Pro.
I love them.
Oh, right.
Okay.
So, sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
So I was trying to run a documentation test here. What was the syntax for that? To like make it a test?
You just document it like this and use the assert. So assert_eq. This makes it
Oh.
assert_eq is the assert equality macro. It makes sure that the left with the comma, the 6 is equal to the
So
right.
just by putting a certain Q in your code block, it'll validate?
Yes, and then you have to run the cargo command to run the test, right? So
Oh,
it's not
okay.
just cargo test. It's that's not the one. Cargo health test. And then actually it's documentation with are run by default.
Okay.
So that should work. Now, documentation tests run on private code are not run by default, right? So they're only run if they're executed, if they're generated.
Gotcha. Sweet.
Did that work for you?
So I did get a failing test, but I don't think it's for a different reason.
Let's go ahead and copy this code. Let's give it a shot. So we're gonna go down here, CD temp, cargo new, and then I'll just do, test that. CD test that, import made. And if I do this, cargo test, we see nothing, 0 tests. If I jump into the foreground and I paste this other one, and I run cargo test, we still see 0 tests. Because I have this here. This should say, the test.
I might say I'm not importing one.
Test. Maybe then it does it again. So we'll try here, mod test app.
Well, I suppose there's a way to turn this light off, huh?
Maybe that one over there does it. Actually, no.
It's a clapper.
Nope. That just controls that.
Don't worry about
So fun.
Oh, right. So the appeal here that we're asking is, why doesn't this test run? And it may be because this is a binary. That's kind of
Yeah, I think I just got mine working with a library.
Yeah, so then the question there is, how do we make the app run with the binary? Let's see here. Let's try this, cargo doc first thing. This is when we just add one to the number given, and it shows us our documentation. So we've generated the documentation there. And then if I do cargo doc, cargo test, running the 0 test, cargo test doc. That is interesting. Now you know why I never like these documents. They never seem to work for me. They're too finicky. It's like a good idea that just wasn't done.
Maybe it only runs on libraries?
No, I don't think so. We can see here, let's go over here. Cargo, doc, test. Doc tests don't work in bin targets. This is a limitation of Rust doc. You can't run doc tests over binaries. There you go. But it says now this is a supported issue in Rust doc. This is now supported in Rust doc. So what do we do?
Man, this jacket's getting.
So we run here Rust doc test.
Look, jacket. It's fine. It's annoying.
You know what I think the problem is here? I think the problem is actually pretty simple. I think the problem here is that it is, there we go. Now, well, now it actually says failures could not add one line 5. Add one not found in scope. Okay, so if you wanted to do this, you would say, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that as to why. Oh, here, look, April 8th, there you go. That's the last time I complained about this. This is a real gotcha. It's not clear to me why Doccat should not run in the binary, but the same code in source command generates code docs with part of the doc. Okay, so I've written
It's on.
What's that?
So, my mom's friend, right, cleans apartments, and somehow he got his hands onto a MacBook Pro that was left in one. And so we put in the charger, and I pressed the power button a bunch of times, and now it finally turned on, so it's not dead.
There you go.
So that's fun.
And
This one has FireWire.
Is it his or did he find it?
He found it, he just gave it.
So now the question is, what else is on
I don't know, that's gonna be the fun part.
You never turned it on.
Does it have Find My iMac, whatever?
No, it's one of the older ones, I think. Or, I don't know,
Okay.
actually, I'll be honest, I don't know much about
it? This
that.
sounds like a bug, because I've already complained about it back in April, which is something I
Gotcha.
totally forgot about.
I gotta love when you just find your old posts when you're looking at an issue.
Yeah, well, I complain about everything that bothers me, so yeah, I find them a lot, and they usually don't get fixed, so I find them again. But I like how 11 other people also thought it, resonated with them. Anyway, maybe I'll post again on it, but for right now, let's just move on. And I've already given you my disclaimer that this feature is not perfect.
Hey, Evan, your Rust projects, do some of them have GUI interfaces that call the Rust code? Or
I don't make GUIs, I make web apps. So, I mean, I have web servers that I write in Rust, and back ends for API systems that I build in Rust. Then the front end, I do in something like, Angular.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't make like things that.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, past all this stuff, we've already done it, talked about it. Exporting a convenient public API with pub use. Okay, so you can have a different structure internal to your module than the one you export. This is very frequently useful because sometimes you want to have like 30 modules internally, but you don't want to burden your users with having to know how those 30 modules are structured. And you also sometimes don't want to support this structure in your module. This is me all the time. I generally speaking don't want to support complex structures when I'm providing that to my users. However, I may want to use complex structures for my own simplicity. So in order not to have to support this, I'm using some module or another module of useful type. I could just say, put useful type always in my crate, right? And in order to do that, you can use pub use, another module of useful type, and it'll automatically re-export that. So here's an example of that. Here's your documenting. Also, notice this at the top. We went over this, I think, in the first class. The 3 slashes says automatically, like the one you see right here. This always says document the thing right below the code comment. The one up here with 2 slashes and an exclamation point, this means I'm documenting the thing that I'm containing, not the thing right below. So the reason what they're doing here is they're documenting source lib, right? Everything inside of the source lib is documented with this. Art, a library for modeling artistic concepts. This library is called Art, and it's a library for modeling artistic concepts. This comment here, the primary colors according to the RYB color model, this is documenting primary color. Okay? And down here, these 2 slashes means I'm not documenting anything. I'm just writing a comment. And then here's how it generates art, library for modeling artistic concepts, and it shows you the 2 modules there. And notice these 2 modules, kind and utility. These 2 modules are right here, pubmod kinds, and then primary color and secondary color. And pubmod utils, and then it has this mix. You'll see here they say use crate kinds, : asterisk. This is not going to re-export anything. So this is going to make this stuff available to you down here without showing this to your users. If you use pub use crate kinds, then what you're going to see is primary color and secondary color will also be available in utils. Does that make sense? So use just makes the code available here. Primary color is here, and we're using it here without the definition, without saying kinds, primary colors. Pub use would mean that primary color gets exported with fills. Okay, and you can see here the re-exports. So the reason why these re-exports are here is because at the very top we're saying pub use. And pub use is going to not just alias them for your module, but it's going to export them. So this is called documented under the re-export section. And the way I look at it, if I'm re-exporting something and I'm only supporting the re-export, then I'm not supporting my module structures, which makes my life easier. In order to publish Crate, it's very simple. This is a really nice thing about Rust. Rust uses this cargo new command to generate a new project for a library and for binaries. And that is nice because you get the scaffolding done. You get to see how a project is supposed to look. After you have created the project, if you want to publish it, you just go cargo login and you give it your API key, which is right there, right? And that simple command will log you into Cargo, and then all you do is do cargo publish, and it'll upload your package to Crates.io for other people to use, whether it's a binary or a library. It's super easy to do. Conversely, NPM is almost nothing like Cargo, right? So if I compare these two tools, you'll find that the Cargo tool, in my opinion, is much appreciated, much better. So if I come down here and I go out, I go npm init or npm new foo app, right? That doesn't even work. You got to do mkdir foo app, and you jump into foo app and you go npm init. That's how you do it in npm. And when you do it with npm, you'll also notice all you get is this one file, package.json. So npm doesn't structure your application in a way that makes it easy to develop that application. It doesn't give you any scaffold for a proper application, whether binary or library. Cargo does. All that npm does is generate the package.json. And the Cargo one, which is right here, generates the equivalent for Rust, which is the Cargo TOML, and it generates the entire scaffold of the application with your documentation, your Git, all that kind of crap. So if you look down here, it's the Cargo TOML that was generated. It's unfortunately never enough. You see, like, you have name, test app, version 01.1 edition, and 2021 is very minimal, and it relies on default to the rest of it. But if you want to do something like change that, like the name of the module, or add the author to it, or whatever, you can do that just as well by jumping in here and adding whatever you want, right? And then it'll take care of that.
Is there any way to configure Cargo to add that automatically when you create a new project?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it, but I think that could be useful functionality. But you'll see here that in order to publish, you're supposed to have a description, a license file, documentation, homepage, and repository. So all of this is supposed to be needed before you run the Cargo publish command. And all you do is drop down here and fill that out. And then you can run Cargo publish and get your first crate on Crates.io. And if you're becoming a serious Rust developer and you want to give it a shot, it may not be a bad idea to create a totally unique crate on Crates.io just to play around with it. And you can pull it down. Don't pick a name that is useful. Pick a name that's not useful. Like my stupid test app 01 or something. You know? Okay, package guessing game. There's the version, so they're adding here the description and the license. And by the way, there is actually this year this Linux Foundation Software Package Data Exchange, SPDX. This is something corporations have imposed on us, and you have no obligation to use it, but it makes some people's lives a lot better. This is essentially a syntax for writing what your license you're providing your code under. And this is supposed to have all of the open source software licenses. And the advantage there is that if you're building a Rust system and you're using hundreds of libraries and different binaries or whatever, or not in Rust, in a different language too, you can easily audit all of that code for license compatibility. So you can send that over to your legal department and say, hey, I'm using this code in this context. Are these licenses compatible? And they can look at those licenses and say yes or no. But if you look at it down here, you'll notice that we have the license MIT, and that is in the SPDX, and then down here, they say MIT, and then capital OR Apache-2.0. that is also SPDX. So that's like the SPDX, one or the other. Some programs are licensed under two different licenses concurrently. You get the more liberal of the two that you want.
So in your code, you're defining that there's these different licenses that you recognize?
Yeah, exactly, that you accept. So when I release code, I get to say the license that I want. Now, because I, generally speaking, don't want anyone making money off of my code unless I'm making money, that's what I write code for. I usually release it under the AGPL, because the AGPL is the biggest, most prohibitive license that corporations hate. And if they want to use my code, they can call me up and put money in my pocket or bug it off. So you get to say under what terms you want to release your code. And that matters a lot because, you know, we're coding because we like it, but we're not coding for big evil corporation to make money off of us for free. There's a certain amount where I just simply say that.
But isn't much of your code already online, already out there?
Under the licensing terms that I find acceptable, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the AGPL. I don't mind people with less money than me using my code for free, but you know, I don't work for people that have more money. That's
he does.
Cuck nonsense there. Absolutely not.
See, in the 4D world that you know I've been part of, the source code is a closely guarded secret usually. It's generally not published anywhere. Now, amongst other developers on the same forum of the exchanges, but generally the source code for your whole project is tightly guarded secret, and the client doesn't even get to see it. In most cases.
Which is, that's only a lot of proprietary companies work. I work for one like that. However, that doesn't really work that well because it's relatively easy with modern tools to take apart code, you know, compiled code and to see the source code underneath it. It's called decompilation.
Okay.
So the question fundamentally is, if you rely on cops with guns, right? That's what everyone relies on. It's intellectual property, which means that I have to pay someone $1 billion corporation to do some stupid stuff. Conversely, it means they have to pay me to use my code. And fundamentally, I rely on the same mechanisms that they do, which is, you know, some pig with a gun. And that's kind of how that system works. Carroll published, and it publishes, publishing a new version of an existing crate. When you've made changes to the crate and are ready to release a new version, you change the version value specified in the cargo.toml file. And that's what I showed you, that version is in the cargo.toml. So it's just another one of those attributes in there. And all applications for and libraries for Rust are all released under semantic versioning, which is nice. That's also true of JavaScript. It is not true of Perl, where version numbers are still insane. This is not a command I'd ever suggest you use except in the most dire circumstances, so just skip over it. You have the right to remove versions from cargo. If you do that, you'll likely break a lot of things, many things, many things. So only do it in the event that you have released code that has negative and intentional effects. Cargo workspaces. Okay. So there's a notion of a workspace inside of Cargo, and this is somewhat useful. I've also talked about this. In fact, I even think when I talked about it, I brought up that we're going to cover it more later on. A workspace is a method in which you can create one repository which holds your binary program and also your libraries. So if you notice here, there is a cargo lock and a cargo toml file for the workspace, and then there's a cargo toml file for the adder, which is like a library, right? So the adder has, or rather the adder is a binary in this case, it has source and name. And this allows us to have multiple different binaries using one library, or multiple different libraries being in use in one binary. And now it's going to show you here how this works. In the cargo toml file here, we specify what the members are of it. In this case, we have adder and add1, and you see them both here, adder and add1. And both of these can use a library code elsewhere. All right. I'm also not a fan of this cargo workspace stuff. I prefer the idea of micro repositories rather than mono repositories. but, different people like different things. So.
I think I actually did this. I was doing like a U and a U front end and a rocket back end, and then I did a mono proposal for it.
Yeah, it happens. So a lot of people like that stuff better. I prefer to keep my code separate. So, I mean, when I do it, I'll have like a GitLab or GitHub organization or project, and I'll have front end and back end separate.
I think the main reason I did it is because I had like I also had like a library in there where that had like common structs that were on both sides of things.
Well, if you're using Rocket, it's JavaScript. So was your front end, was your back end in JavaScript too?
Back end was Rocket, front end was U.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what I mean. Back end was JavaScript too. Yeah, that makes sense in that case. If you have both of them using the same library, you could also pull the library out and just version that.
Yeah.
Require both things. Use add one function main, and one of the good reasons why you want to do that is simply permissions. Oftentimes, everyone cares less about front-end code than back-end code. You protect your back-end code more than you protect your front-end code in most cases. Use add one function main, and now what they're doing here is this module add one is pulled in, and now they're calling this function inside of it called add one. And then that's right here. So they have add one source lib. This is showing you this module called add one inside of this workspace. And now they're showing you how they get access to it. So they say use add one in the adder. So now they're in the adder and they want to access add one. How do they do it? They say use add one. And then that's it. It gets pulled in. So all of these modules already have the mod statement there using the cargo workspace. Depending on an external package in a workspace, okay, so you just have this dependency to your cargo total. Now I will say this is also kind of old in my opinion. We used to have to open up the cargo total and write dependencies and ran. Now what we tend to do is just do cargo add. So there's a new command called cargo add, and you can just say cargo add ran or ran add version, and then it'll automatically add this stuff to your cargo total. I don't like adding the dependencies by hand. I always hated that. So I'm glad that feature's there. And you don't do that either in NPM, right? You do npm install -- save, and then it writes into the file for you. That's kind of what I'm used to with. So adding a test to a workspace, here is the workspace down here, and they're creating this new thing called test. And remember, CFG test is whatever they call that, compilation, optional compilation. There we go. Sounds good. So what they're doing here is they're saying if test is set to true, then compile this code, right? So this code is optionally compiled if the configuration parameter test is set to true. And when you call cargo test, it sets this to true. So then this code compiles. What does that mean? That means when you're not calling cargo test, you're calling cargo build, then this is not set to true. And then none of this code exists, right? It just pretends like it's not even there. So you run cargo test, and then you get the test, and you can test just one thing. The P command specifies the name of the crate we want to test, so they're just testing add one, and that's it. So you'll see here that we had these different crates that were, just straight up our other ones, add one and adder. If you use P, you're just testing the add one crate, right? And then here they're just testing the adder crate. Depending on an external package in a workspace. So we did that. We added the dependencies in there. Let's do. That's twice. And then when we run cargo build, you can see here that it says no external crate ran. This is because they didn't add the ran package, the ran dependency to the adder package. So the dependencies here that they have, right? Each different little project that they have, adder source main.ts has a cargo total, right? So you need to add to the cargo total for the specific package what the dependencies are. There is no workspace cargo total. So you have this big thing called a workspace. Inside of it, you have multiple different packages. Each package has its own cargo total. If everything needs to use RAM, every package needs to have cargo total inside of it, inside of that workspace. Okay. And then here's the test graph one. All right. That's it for cargo workspaces. Installing binaries from crates.io with cargo install. This is very simple. You just do cargo install. Here's your homework assignment for tonight. This will be a good one. Go online and find.
Already installed.
What's up?
Already installed.
Excellent. That wasn't what I was going to say. Look for alternatives to proper Unix utilities using Rust. There's quite a few lists online that will tell you like how to use the Rust variant of bind, which is FD. The variant of LS is called EXA. The variant of top is called like PTOP. All of these different things exist on in the Rust ecosystem. They're essentially rewritten utilities, and they oftentimes have better features and work faster than the default utilities. Just to be expected, because Rust is a better language. And lastly, there is methods of extending cargo. So you can see here, if you haven't had cargo dash something, like let's say that you want to create cargo dash improving or whatever. You know, you have a company and you want to write your own wrapper around cargo commands or your own tooling for it. You can easily do that by creating a command called cargo dash improving. And then when you write cargo space improving, it'll look for the dash command, dash improving. By the way, this they stole from Git. This is the same way Git works. Git was originally 100 little small programs. They'd say like git dash commit, right? That's how it used to be. And that's how it should be in Unix, right? Or at least people will argue that. People will argue the Unix philosophy isn't to have one gigantic command called git that does 50 million things. It's to have 100 little small commands, git dash whatever, that do little small things. That's how programs tend to start out, and then they tend to move into this new format, where you have one program that has the ability to do everything. And then in order to get external functionality in there without having to learn all of the complexities of it, you can just follow this format, cargo dash something in your bin path, and then you can access it with cargo space, or cargo dash dash list here. Sharing code with cargos and crates is what makes the Rust ecosystem useful for many different tasks. I agree. Again, to just emphasize that one more time, the thing that makes Rust different from C and C++ is the fact that you have this repository in a compiled language, right? This is one of the unique value offers. So the fact that Rust is memory safe is a huge bonus. But the fact that Rust has an ecosystem is really, I think, what does it, what makes the language great. And yeah, so check it out crates.io and find, you know, looking for things that help make your life easier. There's quite a few things there. All right, and you can see here too. Look how many downloads they have: 100,000, $1 billion downloads, 99,000 crates.
What's the amount of money I have in my bank account?
Streaming it.
You know I always am.
I know what you would do if you had that much money. You buy Twitter.
I'm trying to think of a response. Maybe, but it'll be way funnier by Yahoo. See, you made him laugh. You made him laugh. It's funny.
All right, does anyone have any questions?
Twitter, though.
What's up?
It's not enough to buy Twitter.
100,000 billion.
And then 24 billion?
That is enough to buy Yahoo.
45.
We bought it for 40 and it's obviously worth more now.
Definitely not worth
You definitely overpaid for it.
Definitely way overpaid. Huge mistake.
And this last season was really fast.
Yeah, it's easy to use the ecosystem tooling, so it's.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Are we done for tonight?
I mean, that's a good question. What is your opinion on the class? Should I start and spend some time maybe covering the first section of something else? Hold on one second. Let me go to the
When you come back, I have a question for you. Not necessarily Rust related, but it's about nproc. Oh, improv, yeah, improv, it's so cool.
Not 100% sure. I want to say it might be Signal.
It might be. It had a bit of an iMessage,
So what was the error?
It definitely was mine.
Well, no.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah, I know it's not the exact floor can, I know it's not on the Mac.
Evil.
I'm gonna grab it.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh.
What do you think?
Yeah, give me, some spread.
Personal files
Give me
are
that,
unprotected,
diamond.
this dude got this week's virus. Actually, that's so funny though. A bunch of Word documents. Later. Fire shop will.
How y'all doing over there?
I'm gonna leave it at like
Trying to
8:30.
figure out why it's giving me an error on the latest version of Java.
Like Colossians, like the Bible.
Wait, you doing Java stuff, you said?
Yeah, I'm trying to do.
Suicide boy.
This is a program that I already wrote, by the way.
All right, so what does everyone want to do? You want to cover a couple more lessons on the next chapter? Or you want to call it a night?
Just call it next.
Alright, so
I need to leave in 30 minutes.
I can't wait.
Okay. Alright.
What's up?
So Evan,
So,
disregard this for now.
There's probably multiple
as you
Java
probably
versions
heard,
in your path.
Got a MacBook,
So if you look at your path,
old one, mom's friend.
$sign there.
Cleans up apartments, gave it to me, didn't know
all
it worked,
caps.
put it in the charger, works now. My man did not clean his history.
This is your path.
So you can only imagine the depths of iniquity existing upon this thing. This thing has a bunch of like trashy, ooh, your files are not protected, kind of stuff. But disregarding this, the more interesting thing lies upon here. I'm gonna share something really funny. So so nprop, right? Gets me the amount of cores I have, which
These
is
are all the.
two
so these
physical,
are
two logical, right? What is it? Well, LSCPU also backs me up on this.
Let's update alternative. Never seen it.
Because, go up here, it says have one socket, 2 cores per socket, and 2 threads per core, it's 4. Simple, right? But if I do nproc all, I get 8.
So what version are you expecting? Because it looks like you have an 11 and a 19.
I'm supposed to have 19.
Kinda weird, right?
Update alternative.
Was that showing 19 right there? Go back. Is that obvious good?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,